I added a feature to Rock Me Amadeus. That's my website. It's RockMeAmade.us. That's Rock Me Amadeus, my website. And if you just stick that into the address bar of any web browser, it'll take you to my website. Um, Amadeus is the first, I guess, is the first name of Mozart, Amadeus Mozart. And there was a movie called Amadeus, which came out in the mid 80s. It's about a 3 hour long movie about Mozart. And you would get from that, probably inspired Falco to make his song Rock Me Amadeus. Because the thing you realize about Mozart is at the time he was like the first rock and roll musician of sorts. He was a young prodigy. He was the prodigy, um, a young prodigy musician that at a very young age was producing all sorts of concertos and stuff, and in his 20s was frolicking women and having sex orgies and junk like that and playing music and whatnot. And he had the sex, drugs, and rock and roll was doing that. And then towards the end of his life, was in a tremendous amount of debt and ended up dying and being dropped into a mass grave because um, because he couldn't afford to be buried normally. I mean, so the grave site of Mozart is not known. They don't know where his body is because he was in so much debt that he couldn't afford a normal burial. And but his music lives on, and so Rock Me Amadeus was this song that Falco produced in the '80s, and I figured, what song or idea is going to bring people of the '80s together, people that like '80s music together, people that were familiar with MTV, what it was in the first year, and why it was such a special thing was the music videos and seeing them in succession and being able to share in the experience. And that's what my whole website, the whole focus of my website is it takes a YouTube player and it takes advantage of the simple API. API stands for Application Programmers Interface. Um, that is used to permit programmers to make the YouTube the embedded player, do things that it wouldn't normally do. And so I can write a JavaScript program to control that YouTube player that you'd find on people's websites. Um, that's the reason why those players exist, is so that people can share their videos from their own web pages, rather than sending people to YouTube to play the videos. They want them to be in the context of their website, instructing them and showing them YouTube videos without driving them to YouTube. Whereas YouTube will put little junk inside of that player to try to suck people into their website away from people's web pages. So the way that they promote their website, the way they advertise their website, is by providing this YouTube player that people can use on their websites. And to add to the lock in of trying to keep people on their websites rather than going to YouTube, um, YouTube offered people the ability to customize the controls and to use JavaScript to control the YouTube player when it's on somebody's website. And I found out what these controls were able to do, and I found out that I could set the start and end points of any video that I played, and I could also adjust the volume level. And so I said, what can I do with these limited controls? Oh, I can uh, simulate a a, a list of videos, a playlist, make it behave like a videotape that has been playing forever in a loop, by using some simple mathematics, a modulus operation, which is the remainder of a division. And so I take time, which is ever going, um, and I divide it by the duration of a playlist. And the fraction's going to, the remainder of that division is going to determine where the playhead is within the playlist. So it's like it's playing that playlist forever. I could have added into the math a way of setting where it starts in the playlist, such that I can make it always start at the time it was created, or something like that. Or I could, when it's playing back, I could say, it's going to start from the beginning at this time and get everything synced. Or I could just let it, I could just, you know, let it start wherever it wants to, and just, by, it'll be wherever it is. It doesn't really matter where it starts. The idea is trying to keep everybody in sync. And so that was the idea, was that to simulate a streaming video source or broadcast, just taking a playlist and making it behave like a broadcast, like you would watch on TV, which are just a bunch of, it's just TV programmers, determine different kind of programmer determining what you're going to watch on TV, you know. And for every week, they have to determine what people are going to watch, because if they don't, the FCC will fine them for not having content on their channel. They actually do fine people for not having content. They also fine people for not having advertisements in state, or not having station identification every 15 minutes. Because if they don't, no, people won't be able to determine the context of what they're watching. They won't be able to tell if it's real, or if it's a if it's a uh, if it's if it's fiction or nonfiction. They won't be able to tell the difference. And the first bit of art that challenged this was the War of the Worlds commentary by Orson Welles, where he left a bit of time in his broadcast where people were so enthralled by the story that they thought it was real. And because of that, probably as a result of just how the mania that came out of that, the FCC was formed to try to prevent such shit like that, from happening. But now on YouTube, you could do it as much as you want. Nobody takes it seriously. Not a lot of it is in real time. But I was inspired by MTV to produce my site, and I saw a documentary just a couple days ago about Woodstock '99, and how they totally screwed that up. And towards the end of it, people were in retaliation against MTV, in retaliation against the guy who was the original founder of Woodstock, and how Woodstock '99 was really painted up to be this great experience, but when in reality it was just, there was a lot of capitalism in it. They were forcing people to drop their water bottles coming into the festival, and forcing them to buy food on the inside, and it was like bottled water was $4, which even today is just insane price. And some guy was eating a salad, and he said, "This salad cost me $16. This water was $4." And their lack of being able to take care of the porta potties and all that stuff, the complete lack of logistics and getting things done correctly in that festival backfired. And at the very end of it, people trashed the whole festival, set everything on fire, threw trucks There was a van where somebody that was moving during it was moving during a Fatboy Slim concert inside of a rave um, area, and they could he couldn't continue his set without them getting rid of that vehicle from there, and then they looked in the vehicle and there was an older man having sex with a 16-year-old girl, and so this is the kind of BS that and the one of the ladies from MTV, one of the hostesses, said that a man had burned her butt with a cigar. They that they were so that the VJs were so ready to get away from that Woodstock experience because it had turned into complete catastrophe. And but it was part of it was retaliation against MTV and how MTV had become more and more corrupt and was pushing bands that the consumers were not interested in, and so they retaliated and say, well, no more NSYNC. We don't want any more NSYNC. We want more corn, you know, and we can't deal with your BS bands, you know. I didn't I whenever I was in New York, it was in 2000 1999, and that was when this Woodstock, and so I can remember at the time we were working on our .com that one of the people that were in our group was going to go to Woodstock and talked about going to that festival, and I was thinking, oh, I could be out there enjoying this Woodstock festival, and now I saw this documentary and it says, thank God I wasn't at that Woodstock festival. But I can remember how capitalistic things were in New York at the time, and I can remember whenever I was at SIGGRAPH in L.A. and how at the SIGGRAPH convention how expensive it was to eat, and at the L.A. SIGGRAPH at the L.A. Convention Center there was no place to eat anywhere within, you know, like like a mile of that place, and that you were pretty much, unless you could get a taxi cab somewhere, or you were familiar with the area, the only place to eat was in the convention center, and the convention center food was like $20, you know, and so everybody's had that experience of being forced to starve or pay a tremendous amount of money just to eat. And when you've lived in Manhattan as long as I did, paying large amounts of money or paying uh, $20 for a steak and $4 for a Coke, and not being offered the ability to to um, to refill your drink for free, which is they don't do in New York. There is no place in Manhattan that you will find a restaurant that will permit you to get refills for free. At least there wasn't at the time I was there. And every inch of printed space, every inch of anything in Manhattan is advertised on. They will find places to stick advert. And the other thing that really pissed me off about Manhattan is um, the scarcity of bathrooms. Um, and some businesses wouldn't even let you use their bathroom, and public bathrooms were just kind of non-existent. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. And when you've lived in New York, and when you've lived somewhere like Albuquerque or Texas or Dallas or something, and you go and you live in New York for a while, in Manhattan, you start to realize how fucking stupid that city is. How capitalistically driven they are, and how brainwashed the people are in that city. And when NSYNC was popular, they used NSYNC. I would go to the Gristedes grocery store, and all they would ever play all the time was narcissistic New York bent music. They wouldn't play anything else. They wouldn't play rock music like you would at a HEB in Texas. You go to HEB in Texas and listen to nice '80s music. At Gristedes, they were playing NSYNC or or or, um, or Frank Sinatra. You know, is it NSYNC or Frank Sinatra in 2000 during the .coms, and New York was going to make sure that you knew it was a fantastic place to be for the .coms or for whatever you were there for. But and the New Yorkers didn't have any problem with that amount of identity, um, pushing their identity on everybody. You know, pushing the fantasticness of living in Manhattan, which I determined the only thing that was great about Fantastic was the food, the diversity of food. That was the only thing that I really liked about New York. Everything else I hated. Um, I hated that it's just one large radiator, and when it heats up in the summertime and it rains, then you have this unbearable amount of humidity that makes Houston look bearable. Um, the rains there are just awful. The winters are okay. The snow, it's probably the best time in New York to go would be either the spring or during the winter. All other times it sucks. And I'm talking about Manhattan because it was the only part of New York that I really experienced. Other parts of New York that I've seen, not directly but indirectly, look like um, Connecticut. And it's just green trees and stuff. It looks like any other part of America. There's nothing special about it, you know. And Manhattan is just a really good example of the last 300 or 400 years of man trying to perfect a city, try to perfect, trying to make a city exist. It's completely man-made. The whole Manhattan Island is completely man-made. Um, it's it originally had hills, and they cut them down and made them flat so that people could walk around and you could see for miles, you know. And so anyhow, the backtracking out of me getting into talking about Manhattan. What was I talking about? I was programming. So I programmed my website, and I programmed it to act like MTV, and I added a feature to it, which was I found out I had already added the feature, I just wasn't using it. It was a search ability that would change the catalog, the directory of videos that you pick from. I haven't incorporated it into the player so that when you select your search, it allows you to thumb through only those channels whenever you're playing. It doesn't do that, but it does let you see only, say, the '80s videos or the '90s videos or things like that. And it doesn't handle the case where your search uh, doesn't have any results very well. If you do that, then it comes up having problems. So what I did is I gave people the option to use the search, and if they have a bad experience, they just won't use it. Okay, and so it's offered as a side thing. And my Rack Me Amadeus site, what it does is it makes it does a whole ton of things. I'll put this on a separate video. Oh, darn it.